million as governor of Massachusetts. Do you trust him as a tax cutter?
You know, it's going to be really more, do the voters trust him? And do they trust me? I know this, I balanced a budget every year I was governor. I left a surplus of $850 million, coming up from a deficit of $200 million. I know I signed the first ever broad-based tax cuts. And I know that I've made tax cuts that really impacted families by eliminating the marriage penalty, doubling the child care tax credit, raising the income level at which people paid their income tax. But let me speak to the really heart of what I think a lot of Americans are concerned about with the economy. And frankly, in talking about the stimulus package, one of the concerns that I have is that we'll probably end up borrowing this $150 billion from the Chinese. And when we get those rebate checks, most people are going to go out and buy stuff that's been imported from China. I have to wonder whose economy is going to be stimulated the most by the package. And I'm grateful that something is being done. I think we all can at least acknowledge that it's good to see Congress working with the president to do something. But if we're going to spend $150 billion, I'd like to suggest that maybe we add 2 lanes of highway from Bangor all the way to Miami on I-95. A third of the United States population lives within 100 miles of that. This nation's infrastructure is falling apart. And if we built those lanes of highways with American labor, American steel, American concrete, I believe it would do more to stimulate the economy. And the reason I say that is because when we were going through a recession in my state, we were in the middle of a $1 billion highway construction program that brought about 40,000 jobs and brought $1 billion of capital into the economy. That's a long-term stimulus package that I think would have more impact on the American long-term future, and it would keep social capital from being wasted, fuel wasted. A lot of people in Florida sit around in traffic every day, never getting to their kids' dance recitals or soccer games because they're stuck in traffic, and we've done nothing about it.
Governor Romney, you've criticized Senator McCain for opposing the first 2 Bush tax cuts. You've criticized Mayor Giuliani for going to court to try to retain a commuter tax on people coming to the city of New York. Do you trust Senator McCain and Mayor Giuliani on the issue of being tax cutters?
I trust these 2 gentlemen, and I respect them greatly. We do have differing views, and over time our record with regards to taxes has been somewhat different. But I think all of us on this stage want to see taxes brought down and want to see spending brought down. I have a sound record of doing that. I came into a state that faced an extraordinary series of challenges. Massachusetts was in a ditch. We had about a $3 billion budget shortfall. Everybody thought we were going to have to raise taxes to solve the problem. And I went to work to get Massachusetts back on track, working with Democrats across the aisle. We were able to do that without raising taxes. And that was critical, because it said to the business community, you don't have to worry about Taxachusetts coming back again. You're going to see Massachusetts live within its means. We balanced the budget every one of 4 years. We also put in place a surplus of over $2 billion to help make sure that we'd have the kind of resources that would be needed if there were a rainy day. Now, I also support the Bush tax cuts. Senator McCain voted against them originally. He now believes they should be made permanent. I'm glad he agrees they should be made permanent. I think he should have voted for them the first time around. And that's just a difference of viewpoint. The Bush tax cuts helped get our economy going again when we faced the last tough times. And that's why right now, as we face tough times, we need to have somebody who understands, if you will, has the private sector, has the business world, has the economy in their DNA. I do. I spent my life in the private sector. I know how jobs come and I know how they go, and I'll make sure that we create more good jobs for this nation. And one way to do that is by holding down taxes and making those tax cuts permanent.
Senator McCain, Governor Romney invoked your name. Do you believe Governor Romney raising fees $250 million is equivalent to raising taxes?
Well, I'm sure those people that had to pay it did, I would imagine. But look, I voted on the tax cuts because I knew that unless we had spending under control, we were going to face a disaster. We let spending get completely out of control. Of course, those tax cuts have to remain permanent. Otherwise, people experience a tax increase. We let spending get out of control. We Republicans lost an election. We lost an election because of the bridge to nowhere and the fact that we presided over the biggest increase in the size of government since the Great Society. We let it get out of control, and the fact is that if we had had the spending restraints that I proposed, we would be talking about more tax cuts today. We would be talking about more tax cuts. The trust and confidence on our base was eroded. I will restore that trust and confidence because I will restrain spending along with further tax cuts, and I'm very proud of my record. And if you look at those organizations that grade people, such as the National Taxpayers Union, the Citizens Against Government Waste, Citizens for a Sound Economy, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, my record is very, very high for a consistent record of being a fiscal conservative, a record that I'm very proud of. But I'm going to stop the pork barrel spending, and we're not going to have any more bridges to nowhere.
Senator, our time is up. Congressman Paul, you often have a different view of these issues, so I'll ask a vastly different question. Should government, in your view, have any role at all in stimulating the economy like this?
Well, sure, indirectly. They shouldn't stimulate it by interfering in the market rate of interest. That's where our basic problem comes from. And when you do that, you get into these problems, and then everybody wants to solve the problem by printing more money and spending more money and asking the Federal Reserve to, lower interest rates. And that just makes the problem that much worse. The government does have a responsibility, but it's supposed to lower taxes, get rid of regulations, and devise a monetary policy that makes some sense. But to continue to say that we just appropriate more money, which is more deficit, and then expect us either to borrow it or expect the Federal Reserve to monetize it, it makes our problems worse. Just look at what's happening today. The dollar is crashing. And why? And Tim there suggests that we think of the economy, but not in foreign policy. You can't do that. They're one and the same. That's where all the money's going. We're spending nearly $1 trillion a year overseas maintaining this empire. And then there's never been a war fought without inflation and destruction and devaluation of a currency. And this is what we're doing today to ourselves, is we're literally spending ourselves into oblivion. But nobody here is willing to even suggest that we cut something overseas. But we have to. We don't need to cut anything here at home. I'd like to see things frozen. I'd like to see massive tax cuts. But we need deregulation. I was one of 3 people that voted against Sarbanes-Oxley. I knew that would be a problem, and it is a problem to the financial markets. So this is the kind of thing we need. We need the government out of the way, but it should have sound money, low taxes, less regulations, and a sensible policy where we're not wasting our money overseas.
Congressman, thank you. Mayor Giuliani, next question goes to you. A story right out of the news over the last several days. Many big brand name banks in this country, Merrill Lynch, Citigroup, to name 2 of them, have gone overseas, it's been said, hat in hand, looking for these cash infusions up to $20 billion, literally to stay afloat, looking for money from governments of Abu Dhabi, Japan, Korea, Saudi Prince Alawid, whose money you turned away in New York after 9/11. The question is, and I know you know a lot of these people at Wall Street firms, the big New York banks, is there something, even though it's money to stay afloat, fundamentally un-American in what's going on?
Well, first of all, let's distinguish it from the presentation of the $10 million check. That was a very different circumstance. The prince came to Ground Zero at the request of the White House. I took him there to show him the devastation, I think in part to see how much of an alliance we could get and how much empathy we could get and how much support we could get. He presented me with a $10 million check for the Twin Towers Fund, and I took it. And then an hour or so later, I found out he issued a press release attacking American foreign policy and saying that American foreign policy and America's support for Israel was one of the causes of it. And I gave him the check back because I thought, and so did the people that advised me, they thought of it as blood money. That's a different circumstance than an investment in a private institution. America is in a global economy. That's what we are. That's where we are. We have to look carefully at investments to make sure they're honest, to make sure they're transparent, to make sure there's no other hidden motivation behind it. But we are engaged in the global economy. And when countries invest in the United States, there's a mutuality of interest that's developed that is helpful to us. Remember back in the 80s, all of the discussion and worry about Japanese investment I think they even bought your building.
Rockefeller Plaza?
Right. Well, there was a big worry that it was going to become a Japanese building.